right? So that was labor, and now we have capital. This is pretty important. All right, capital is man-made means of production. Let's look at the example so you'll understand better. But then capital are things that directly contribute in the production process. Directly contribute in the production process. So let's look at the types of capital, then you'll get a better idea. First, there's fixed capital. All right. So fixed capital are capital items, durable capital items that can be used repeatedly with depreciation. All right. It depreciates. For example, machines, tools, screwdrivers, and all that. That's fixed capital. You use that to produce something else. All right. Then there's floating capital. Floating capital are stocks in all the stages of production. So in a factory, for example, there's raw material stocks, then there's semi-finished goods stocks, then finished goods stocks. So things such as that. So basically it's the stock that you have. And then there's infrastructural capital. Now this is important. This is capital stock which facilitates economic activities in the economy. This can be divided into two, as social infrastructure and economic infrastructure. Now social infrastructure, they provide services to fulfill human needs. For example, schools fulfill education, and then hospitals for health care, things such as that. Economic infrastructure, they provide services to facilitate production process or economic activities. It's in the word itself. All right. So roads, airports, those are infrastructure that are essential for economic processes. All right. Finally, we have human capital. This is pretty nice. All right. And frequently asked question, what human capital is? Human capital is the labor power improved through training, experience, and education. All right. So human capital is there in all labor. All right. But then it has to be improved. So most of the time they ask something such as how do you improve human capital? Right. So human capital is improved through things such as education, training, nutrition. All of those help to develop human capital. And then when talking about capital, we have to know how capital forms. Now land, labor, those things are obvious. All right. But then capital is something different. So how does capital form? Where does it come from? All right. So let's look at this. Gross capital formation or gross investment. That's the, all right, look at that. Additional capital stock added to existing capital stock in a specific economy. That's gross capital formation. So gross investment is also equal to capital formation. All right. And gross investment is found by adding capital depreciation to net investment. Now these are some big words, but don't worry. Now gross capital formation is the formation of capital. All right. And to find how capital forms, we are looking at the net investment and adding something called capital depreciation. Now let's look at what capital depreciation is. Capital depreciation, also known as consumption of fixed capital, is the process of formatting capital stock to replace depreciated capital. All right. Now we'll be learning more about depreciation and all in future units. All right, where we have to talk about it excessively. But for now, all you need to know is to find gross investment, we have to add capital depreciation to net investment. But then now we know that the source of capital is investment. But then what's the source of investment? Savings. All right. Savings is the balance after deducting consumption expenditure from total disposable income. Now savings is something you used to do, I don't know, since the day you got some coins in your hand. I hope you learned how to save. But then these are just big words used to define it by economics. But it's pretty simple. Look at this. Savings is the balance after deducting consumption expenditure. So you had 100 rupees, okay, which is your total disposable income. Your parents give you 100 rupees when you go to school. All right, that's your total disposable income. You go and buy something from the canteen for 50 rupees. All right, that's your consumption expenditure, and then you bring back the other 50 rupees and put it in your little piggy. All right, so that's the savings. Simple. Now savings is the source of investment. So first you have to save, then you invest, then you form capital. This arrow is flying, I don't know, but then when you save, you invest. When you invest, you form capital. Simple. Final factor of production, entrepreneurship. I mean, this is everywhere, people talk about how I became an entrepreneur, how I'm a millionaire at 21 and all that. Look at this picture and you'll understand. Anyway, entrepreneurship is the human resource that initiate production by organizing land, labor and capital to produce goods and services. So entrepreneurship is a factor of production. All right, that's a person. All right, it's this ability, it's not the person, that's the entrepreneur. All right, this is entrepreneurship is the ability for him to combine land, labor and capital. So there will be people working under him in his factories or whatever in order to produce something else. All right, so he's like the leader, he's the boss. All right, so what are the functions of an entrepreneur? All right, he takes the initiative. All right, I told you, he organizes the resources, he identifies opportunities and prospects, he takes the risk. Now this is important because the payment for entrepreneurship is profit. So he has to work for it, he has to take a risk of loss, basically the opposite of profit. He does the decision making. Right, he's not the manager, but he's the decision maker. Then technology transfer and adaptation and innovation. So all of these are functions of an entrepreneur. Now that we know about the factors of production, let's get on to production. When we are talking about production, we encounter something called production possibility. Now production possibility is the maximum output an economy can produce using available productive resources. Alright, it's the maximum. Now we'll be talking about production possibility a lot in PPCs, which is production possibility curve itself. Okay, but now that we're talking about production, we should know that production possibility depend on, that is, in order for production possibility to be happening in an economy, it should satisfy two reasons: full employment and full production. Full employment is that you use all the available resources in the economy for the production process. Full production is, now that you are using all the resources, you should use these resources with maximum efficiency. When both these are satisfied, you achieve production possibility. So now that we talked about production possibility, and remember I told you, for full production, use these resources at maximum efficiency. So this is productivity. So productivity of resources is the average output of a unit of input. So for example, in full production, these resources should be used at maximum productivity as well. That means the highest output should be received from the lowest input. Right, so by putting some 5 raw materials, you should be able to get out 50 pieces of wood or whatever. All right, so now that we know how to find productivity, let's see what the determinants of productivity are. So productivity is determined based on the technology used in production, the human capital, okay, that's the people working, how they work, the innovations, I mean, a better technology could increase productivity. All right, if human capital, if the humans are the working are inefficient, productivity falls. Innovations can cause productivity to increase. The management system, a good management system makes productivity higher. Attitudes and values, good attitudes and values will increase productivity. Division of labor and specialization I told you it has two sides. It could increase productivity, but then due to its demerits, it might cause in a reduction of productivity. So that's it in this video. Now we've covered all the important definitions and concepts in Introduction to Economics. In our next video, we'll be learning about the production possibility curve. So see you all in our next video. Thanks guys.